Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio for this one-off interview special where I'm going to be chatting to Michelle Stone in just a few minutes. Before we get into that conversation, just to highlight what we're going to be talking about this morning, which is rising pupil violence towards teachers across the sector. Most surveys, reports, think tanks, wherever you look, you can see reports of rising incidents of assaults and threats of violence and so on towards teachers and staff across the sector. So this morning we're going to explore that with somebody who unfortunately has personal experience of this. Before we get into that, I just want to say a huge thanks to our sponsors and partners on the show this morning, Hachette Learning, who are producers of professional development books and resources for teachers around the world. And you can find out more on the Hachette Learning website. Just visit them. And they deliver globally. Michelle, welcome to Teachers Talk Radio.
Thanks, Tom, for having me on.
Now, I want to sort of start off really with, before we talk about the policy, the systems, the things happening across the country, you obviously experienced an assault, a life-changing assault. So I want you to take us back, if you can, to that day and what actually happened, and then we can build around that.
So the young person arrived at school and they were dysregulated, but that wasn't unusual. We tried all our usual tricks and tools in the box, so to speak, to de-escalate, all the usual things: ignore, distract, humour. And it was clear that this wasn't going to happen on this particular day. The behaviour continued to escalate. The young person tore cupboard doors off the hinges and they were throwing them at people. So I was standing outside the room, making sure that my staff were safe, and I decided that we would do what we call a change of face and take some people out of the room and bring new faces into the room to sort of try again and cool their temperature. And I was in the process of sort of removing some people from the room when things escalated even further, and the young person picked up an office chair and hit me across the back. The wheels of the chair hit my back, and I had a colleague in there at the time that had actually seen it about to happen, obviously, sort of in slow motion as you do, and he'd put his arm out to stop that contacting me. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but he did get severely injured in the assault as well. So again, sort of still life-changing for him. He has no use of his thumb, which we have evolved as humans, haven't we? But yeah, it was one of those moments that feels a little bit more dreamlike and surreal, really.
And obviously, how did it feel then at that moment to step in and sort of protect your staff? I mean,
that was very normal. That didn't feel any way different anyway. No issue at all. That's my role, and a lot of people in chats on the Daily Mail have said that was my job. Absolutely, that was my job. Move in, protect my staff, take them out of the room. Absolutely. And but there had been a rising, that this young person had been escalating their behaviour, and I was nervous having them in the school. So that's why I was outside the door watching what was going on. Normally I would have left my staff to do anything, but I was quite nervous about this young person in the school already.
Obviously, there's a backstory behind that, isn't there? So do you want to tell us a bit more about why you were nervous? Obviously, so that, I guess, the lead up to this incident happening.
Yeah. So this we were a school for children with autism. I tell you a little bit about the building of the school. Actually, it was a beautiful manor house, but lots of narrow corridors and little breakout spaces, and perfect for children with autism. Perfect. But this young person was more on the behaviour side of things, more on social, emotional, and mental health. They did not have a diagnosis of autism at the time, and really they should not have been in our school. We were petitioning for them to move to another school that was completely on the level, a lot more appropriate for somebody who would need their own de-escalation spaces, which we didn't really have. And leading up to this assault, in the weeks leading up to it, we had had a member of staff with injury to her wrist, and another one with an injury to their rotator cuff. And this is sort of where I was going with the leadership team, the area leadership team. Could we please look into moving this young person?
And what happened when you did that?
No, basically, was the answer that came back. It wasn't something that they were going to look into. It was, and yet the local authority were very open to it. They were amazing working with the local authority. I've got to say, worked with many local authorities around the world, and that's a very good one. And the parents were open to the move. They were open to the move. They just wanted what was best for their child at the end of the day.
Yeah. And obviously, at what point did you know that for yourself, what injuries did you sustain, and when did you know it was going to be life-changing?
So it was a little bit surreal. I think, sort of, again, like being in a car crash. Not really quite sure what's going on at the time. The gentleman that was behind me trying to protect me sort of put his arm around my waist and scooped me out. I didn't really realise what had happened at the time. And scooped me out of the room and put me on a chair, and everybody was sort of around me. Are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yes, of course I'm okay. Of course everything's fine. Come on, let's just, Then of course there's the write up to do. There's reports to write, as anybody in a special needs school will know. And when we got through that, when that had happened, I sort of felt a little bit, I don't think I'm okay. So I said to my colleague, I think I'm going to get my mum to come and collect me and take me home. And they said, yes, absolutely. So, but in the car on the way home, Mum said, I think I'm going to take you to A&E. And she did. And they checked me over, and they said, we think you've got some broken ribs and a broken collarbone, but actually we don't do anything for that. So they just popped me in a sling, gave me some painkillers, and sent me off for a bit of rest. And this was May. So I took a couple of weeks off, and then when the ribs and the collarbone started to heal, I went back to work. And yes, I was still in pain, which I just expected. And then it was the summer holidays, and I spent the summer holidays completely resting. My mum had a beach hut, and I sat down just on the chair. I did absolutely nothing that summer. And in September, when I went back to work, things started to decline, and the pain sat in again and became quite significant, quite severe. And then there were days when I couldn't walk, and we were making jokes of it in the school. We were laughing. I was sort of walking like a hunchback, and we were, spirits were still high because great colleagues, as everybody knows. So one thing as a teacher, your colleagues will always have your back. And but one night at home I collapsed and I was blue lighted into the hospital, into Bournemouth, and they thought they were going to have to airlift me to Southampton for emergency surgery. But they were able to stabilise me, and when they did the scan, they noticed the significant injuries to my spine. So then I was a prolonged stay in hospital, waiting for some initial surgeries and different things to sort of, like I said, stabilise. And you know what the medical professional like, they try to do small first and see if that works. They don't want to, suddenly, do huge surgeries if they don't have to. So that was in the October of that year, but there's a big but coming. Whilst I was actually lying in the hospital bed, I got a letter from the school saying that I was redundant. It made me redundant. So that was a huge psychological issue then for me, because I knew that I had ongoing injuries and I was now also going to have to look for a job. Single mum, 3 children, 2 special needs children of my own. That was just even thinking about that day now makes me feel sick. I didn't know what to do, literally did not know what to do. I was lying in a hospital bed, sending my CVs out to recruiters saying I needed short-term assignments because I knew I was going to end up having more surgeries and more time off work. And morally, I couldn't apply for a full-time job, knowing this, that I was going to be needed to take time off work. So there was a lot going on at that time, and that a lot of different nuances to trying to get better and trying to heal.
What reason or decision-making process did the school, if you can go into that, in terms of why did the school make you redundant?
They decided that they were going to put one head teacher over the 2 schools, make them executive head over the 2 schools. But as you can imagine, a couple of months later, they reversed that decision. But yeah, that was the decision at the time.
Sure. And presumably they knew you were in hospital at this point still, and everything else.
My union were just amazing. NAHT were just incredible. I had an amazing rep. I likened her to a little velociraptor. She was amazing, absolutely amazing, and did everything she possibly could, every letter, every policy. But they don't care if they're breaking policies. I put in a complaint later on to their head office, and yes, the complaint comes back. Yes, I'm very sorry, that shouldn't have happened to you. And you get a lovely letter with that on it. And that's it. But anybody that's ever put a complaint in knows that actually it's good energy after bad, isn't it? Because nothing will be done ever, for these private establishments, institutions. They're their own laws unto themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's people in the state sector, even Michelle, who would, I'm sure, probably say the same thing at times as well. That so I don't necessarily think it's particular to the private sector, even though what you've said is fair enough.
I think
okay.
I think sorry to cut across you.
Go.
I think that and that's sort of where I'd like my message. I'm not here today to get sympathy for myself at all. I mean, it, like you said, it's life-changing. I'm losing my house. I know they said it was a 6-figure settlement, but actually it was a two-year salary. That's what it was. I've got 2 years salary. I've lost everything, I do my job because I want to be a model to my children. I want my children to be successful in whatever they wish to do, literally whatever they wish to do, my 3 children. And they're very different, my 3. I feel, or I have felt, I've done a lot of work on myself over the years, but at the time it was extremely dark. And I don't mind admitting that I attempted suicide. My mum was there, she stopped it, and it was a very scary evening. I felt I had nothing left to give. I had nothing left to offer, and that wasn't the only time in the last few years. There was another time as well, when another chair of governors said that I wasn't needed, and again, the really toxic issues that we're all facing in education at the moment. And I don't, obviously don't need to go into them, but it's been a dark few years. Yes, like you said, state system, private system, it doesn't matter. There are some awful conditions that teachers and leaders are working in at the moment.
Sure. And okay, so you were. We'll go back a little bit again to when you got the letter made redundant. You're still in hospital, and then obviously you at some point come out of hospital, but you have these life-changing injuries. So what's the situation physically then from that point on?
So about just over a year ago, I had a spinal fusion in my lower spine, and in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, I go back in again for another fusion. This time in my in my SI joint, and then I'm waiting for one more, which will probably be in my neck. Again, my surgical team amazing, but we're sort of obviously don't want to go straight into that if we don't have to. And then so I suppose sort of the day-to-day issues are, I can have a really good day like anyone. I can have a great day, but I have like I describe it as having a pot of energy, and I have to spend it really wisely. It's my daughter's birthday this week, and we're going to London on Saturday to see Paddington the musical. Now that will wipe me out afterwards for a couple of days, maybe even 3 or 4 days. So I have to really be really careful. If we go anywhere for any significant period of time, I go in the wheelchair. If I go somewhere and I'm going to have to be standing, I can't stand. So we bring like a little foldy chair. I've got crutches for going to Boots to collect my medication. So those sorts of things. I can do what I call car to bar, literally. So I can go from the car to someone's house. But I've got a bus stop that's 100 meters away from my house. I wouldn't be able to make it there.
God. Yeah. Okay. Circling back then to what happened in the school and stuff. What do you think should have happened? What should have happened when because you mentioned that prior to this there was violence and there was sort of this sort of physically abusive behavior going on.
Yeah.
So in your view, what should have happened before?
Well, obviously, Tom, mine is an extreme case, isn't it? I mean, I pray to God not this.
Michelle, I don't know. It's an extreme case in terms of how terrible it's been for you, but in terms of teachers being assaulted and the chance of injury, I would say that seems to be, according to all the data that we have, it seems to be on the rise. So I think, I'm not sure. It is, obviously it's, you hope that it's not, happening routinely, but equally it does seem to be, according to all the data, happening more. So, so what would you have? How would you have wanted them to react?
I think after the first injury, major injury, to remove the young person from the school, definitely. I mean, that would have been, in my mind, a must. To keep the staff safe, make them feel psychologically safe, obviously. I referred to me being nervous. That's why I was outside the door. I was sort of waiting and watching and making sure that the young person was okay. And, that's an issue, isn't it? At the end of the day, you're worried, you're anxious. After the first major injury, so she should have been removed. But even prior to that first injury, let's go back even further. this young person needed daily counselling. She needed a lot more access to CAMS, to psychiatric support, to to issues. I mean, I'm not a specialist, but even things like family counselling. It's just as we all know, those resources have been depleted quite significantly.
Sure. Okay, so we've been through the story of it and what happened and what happened as a result of it, and we know that well, we think that violence is increasing towards teachers, but do you think we're just talking about it more, or do you think that's a reality? And I suppose my second part of that question is, what should we be doing to protect teachers more in schools?
I think, like Richard Branson would say, we need to value our staff, and we need to know that our teachers and our support team are so very valuable, and they need to be protected and cherished. And in a lot of countries, teachers are valued. In our country, they aren't. They just aren't. They aren't valued by government. They aren't valued by parents. I've had parents come and say to me, "I don't agree to you disciplining my child." It doesn't work that way. We're a loco parentis. Children need boundaries. They respond to boundaries. The father of this child that injured me emailed me the next day. I should have been at a meeting. It had been arranged prior to this. The very next day, and told me I was a coward for not showing up to the meeting. It was a tirade, and it broke my heart because all teachers are there. He told me I'd failed his child, I'd let them down, all of this. And that was awful to hear, that as a teacher you thought I'd let your child down, because that's the only reason we're there. So it's multifaceted. We need parents to bring back the respect and bring back that partnership with schools. We need government to understand that, leave teachers alone. They are professionals in their own rights. They honestly, nobody's in that classroom if they do not want to do the best for that child and the children in that room. They really do. You get one or two, but you do that in any profession. But the majority of teachers genuinely know their craft. They know it, and they just need to be trusted. And we need to bring trust back into the classroom, and we need to bring resources back. And Tom, can I mention somebody on public money that's on over £500,000 salary a year? Saying we don't have money for TAs in classrooms is a lie. It's an absolute lie. We do have money for TAs and support staff in classrooms. What we don't have the money for is for executive leaders in multi-academy trusts to be paying themselves more than the Prime Minister. We just don't. That's not fair, and I feel really strongly about that our teachers are struggling at the chalk face, and there are numerous people being paid public money, like I said, more than the Prime Minister's being paid. How many? How many people? We don't know, but we know that there are.
I was talking to a union representative. There's currently a strike going on at a school around sort of abuse and not. Yeah, it's more abuse than violence. But do you think that sort of thinking about that and your situation and wider situations that we have, do you think that inclusion policy has gone too far without either the matching resources or the sort of responsibility side as well?
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's two things, two-pronged. Definitely resources, definitely, and responsibility. I agree, absolutely. And the responsibility is from different angles, and the resources, again, are different angles. I did some work for a local authority in London, a really forward-thinking authority. They were amazing. They were an outlier for special needs children being excluded, partially excluded or permanently excluded. And they brought me in to lead on a project to work with. They've got some money from health. They got some funding from health. So we work with health, we work with schools, and we work with parents. And it was about working with school leaders to understand the needs of these children and meet with school leaders and parents and try and get a meeting of minds in the middle to stop the school suspending that child, but also get that parent. And we did a lot of education. We did a lot of night classes and night courses with the parents to get the parents to understand that actually you need to put boundaries in place for your child, and to help the parent with the behavior needs at home as well. And then the third thing was we were working with health and trying to help CAMS get through their waiting list as quickly as possible. And so that was another part of the resources. It's not just the resources in the school building at the time, is it? It's all we talk about it. I mean, there are mugs, for goodness sake. I'm not just a teacher. I'm a social worker. I'm a parent. We've all seen how many roles a teacher goes through in one day, in one term. And it's a joke, but it shouldn't be a joke. There should be those things in place. I mean, how many schools still have an ELSA? Primary schools still have an ELSA. I've heard that many primary schools have lost their emotional literacy support assistants, and that was great. That was just help that child come into school, feel seen, feel settled. Get their sympathetic system back in order, and just, sort of balance them in the morning so that then they could go through the rest of the day. The same in the afternoon, after lunch. We all know that after lunch is their big surge in behaviour issues. Who's there to settle those students in the afternoon?
Sort of like hospitals, let's say, or doctor surgeries. Do you think there should be sort of zero tolerance on assaults towards teachers? In other words, should children be sort of automatically excluded? Maybe not permanently, but should they be excluded? Should a child be excluded if they assault an adult in a school?
I think a physical assault, yes, absolutely, because there's a lot that leads up to a physical assault, isn't there? I mean, a verbal abuse, no, because children hear it all the time in their homes, on the television, on the screens, whatever. So verbal abuse is something very different, but physical assault, yes. And I think parental abuse also needs to be looked at. I put a poster up in one of my schools once, and I was told by the CEO to take it down about this zero tolerance against. Michelle, that's very, very. I can't remember what he said now, but it was like, we can't have that up in a school. It's not in line with our ethos. And I thought, well, you're in an office, you don't get the abuse from the parents. We are getting yelled at and screamed at and sworn at. It's very different for us on the, again, at the chalk face.
Sure. Should there be clearer national guidance on when a classroom becomes unsafe?
I think that's something I hadn't really thought about, but we get guidance for everything else, don't we? We get all of our safeguarding guidance about how to keep children safe. Maybe there should be a think tank on how to keep our staff safe. The safeguarding of staff, and therefore the impact on the staff's mental health. I mean, I've got so many colleagues and friends that have left the profession, and the profession is a much lesser place without them in it, I have to say. They've left not because they feel physically unsafe, Tom, but because they feel psychologically unsafe. A few feel physically unsafe, but most of them feel that their leaders do not have their back. And that if something went wrong, their leader would not put themselves in front of the bus for them. And that's a dreadful, dreadful place to be, isn't it? I can't imagine. Well, I can imagine. I've been in it, but that's just awful. We should be there for each other. We should be protecting each other and looking out for each other. And I know that I've had some incredible head teachers in my time that have really looked after me. But I equally know that I had a chair of governors that was awful, absolutely horrendous. And they create the environment,
What does that look like? Obviously, you don't have to go necessarily into your case, but what does that look like, that lack of support and that lack of protection?
Well, every teacher knows that you have no idea what that day is going to look like when you walk into that classroom. You've no idea, literally. If you're in a primary school, you've got 30 young bodies coming in from 30 different houses. If you're in secondary school, you're going to meet over 100 pupils in one day. You don't know what that's going to look like. So you walk in with your best smile, your best preparation, and your toolkit of experience of all the thousands of days that you've had before you. And you do your best with the tools that you've got at the time in that moment. And then when you come away, if something hasn't gone right and you come away and you think, oh, okay, that didn't go very well today, or something happened. Let's reflect on it. Let's learn from it. And let's think, right, what would I do again if something similar happened? And that's what schools used to be. They used to be learning communities all together, reflecting, being a reflective practitioner. I remember being at university in the 90s, having this book called Being a Reflective Practitioner. But that seems to have changed now. That now seems to be straight away, if something goes wrong, we point the finger, we go, wow, right, you're on a suspension, that went wrong. The school needs to do a big investigation about why that went wrong. And all of a sudden, you are alone. You are alone with your union and you're not even allowed to speak to anybody in the school. They are all told you can't contact this person. And that is isolating. That is just, awful. And
why are they told that?
Because all of a sudden the suspicion is on this member of staff that something's gone wrong and we are investigating. And so therefore that person is over there. They are not innocent until proven guilty. They are guilty until proven innocent. And that's the culture of schools now. If something goes wrong in your classroom, you are suddenly out on a limb and you are on your own. It's happened to a number of colleagues of mine. They've been suspended with pay, but great, lovely, with pay, but with nothing else, only their union for company. And they never come back from it. You can't come back from that. It's wicked, it's awful, and it makes you feel like you are a criminal.
Yeah. Wow. So in terms of those teachers who maybe do feel, what's the answer to that? What you've just said? What is is it actually, because what you've sort of gone into there is policy, which, you've talked about, but it's also about sort of the way leaders go about it and, senior leaders or executive leaders and even founders of organizations and stuff like that at the top. Yeah. So how did those people make teachers, middle leaders, head teachers, people who are actually in the school, how do they make them feel like we've got your back when it comes to behavior, for example?
Yeah, it's psychological safety for teachers first, really, isn't it, at the end of the day? Well, I'll tell you how I started doing it in a school. Every Friday, I got the staff together and I said, right, okay, one thing that went wrong for me this week was this. And we looked it back and I said, look, these are the events leading up to it. I want you all to unpick it. What went wrong? Not what did I do wrong, just where could I have behaved slightly differently? And I opened myself up to a little bit of vulnerability, a little bit of transparency, and showing them that I am a human and things go wrong for me too. So I might have picked a phone call with a parent that ended with the parent putting the phone down on me, or something like that, something that, and we could unpick it, and then I was taking their suggestions. Oh, Michelle, you could have done this, or you could have done that. And after a few weeks, I started saying, look, could anybody else offer a scenario this week, and again, the collaboration and the collectiveness of that team in that room. And I said, this room is a safe room. We are offering, we are not judging, and it's offer. And I think when I was first a trainee teacher, I felt that from my head. I really did. I didn't feel judged. I felt supported. And, even in a display, oh, Michelle, if you did this and this, oh, okay, great, lovely, thank you. Because we're part of a learning community. And I think we really need to embrace that back again, that, we're not the finished product. The day a teacher stops learning is the day that they die. We are learning all the time. And I think that the judgment from all different angles, your CEO, the Ofsted, whoever, this judgment feeling it's repressing, it's suppressing teachers being able to make mistakes, because that's how we all learn, and they're afraid to make a mistake, so they're leaving because they're afraid, because they know that making mistakes is part of the job. We can't teach without making mistakes. That's what happens, because we do. Every week there's a mistake made. There just is. And as soon as you make a mistake, you're judged. And instead of reflection, being a reflective practitioner, can we go back to that? I would love to be able to go back to being allowed to reflect on your day and think about what you would have done differently, instead of being judged straight away.
Sure. Do you think there'll be those out there who say that the profession, or we, or teachers are sometimes prioritizing the rights of one very challenging pupil over the safety and learning of lots of others? Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yes, I would. I've taught in mainstream, I've taught in primary, secondary, special. I've taught in schools that are all through. And I think that there is always going to be a child in a classroom that takes more of the attention of some of the others. There's always going to be that. But I think if there becomes a pupil that is significantly taking the time of the teacher, the support staff, that's when the leadership team need to step in. And I remember being a Senko in a special school and going and sweeping up a year 8 lad once a day, taking him for a walk around campus and then saying, right, are you ready to go back now? Yes, miss, I'm ready to go back now, But again, I was a Senko, I had the time to do it. Is there anybody in schools at the moment that have the time to do that? Because that was so powerful. It was Senko in 2 different secondary schools where I did that, and that worked. It's that relational building, isn't it? The relationships. But if you're getting a child that is preventing 29 other students from learning, then that's not the right location, not the right schooling for them to be in at all.
Just to recap, because we're coming towards the end now, Michelle. So just to sort of recap, you've said what happened to you and what the consequences were. How's this changed how you see education and teaching?
Myself and my colleagues, that we regularly get together for coffee and chats. So I know I'm not alone when I sort of say this, but education is broken. There's no surprise with that statement. We are seeing a vast number of teachers leaving the profession, whether they're leaving after 3 years, 5 years, 15 years, or like myself and my colleagues, 20 years. We are losing people that have got significant experience to support the next generation. So the next generation are now not getting the guidance and the leadership and the mentorship that I got when I was a new teacher. So it's sad. The profession that we've gone into and we loved, and I knew from a child that I was going to go into and support, and I always wanted to work with special needs children. It's not the profession that it once was, and we need some think tanks, we need some action, but from people that have been there, from people that know what's going on. We need ex-head teachers there. And why are they ex-head teachers? Why aren't they still there? I've got I'm part of a WhatsApp group that's, more and more ex-head teachers are joining, and you think it's so sad, because these heads have genuinely got something to offer, and they are I'm teaching a group of head teachers at the moment on their executive leadership heads course, and there's about 15 of them, and out of those 15, I think 14 of them are truly moral leaders. I don't think that they would ever pay themselves more than the Prime Minister, and they want to be there. They honestly, but I'm scared and I'm worried about them, and I'm thinking, that's great, that's really great. But what happens when you enter into that multi-academy trust and that system and that business system? Will you be able to stand strong and stick to your morals?
You've mentioned before as well about academy CEO pay, and obviously the flip side of that is there'll be people out there who will argue, if you want to get the best people, then you have to pay them in line with people in other industries who are at the top on CEO level. You have to somehow compensate them along the lines of the sort of bonuses or financial possibilities that people have at that level outside of education to get those best people in those jobs. What would you say to them?
Well, you're saying that we need a best person in our. Okay, I'm going to go to very low, £200,000. Okay, we're going to go. We need the best person at the top of our chain. But in order to get that, in order to get that best person, we are going to have to sacrifice those people that are dealing with our young people. I would say, what skills are you looking for at the top? What skills does that CEO need? I don't know what skills they need to run that business. It's a business again at the end of the day, but I do know what skills you need to run a school. So if the multi-academy trust system needs people that are being paid that extortionate amount of money, then it's not the system for schools. That's wrong. That was a mistake to put it in place, because schools were being run by head teachers before, autonomous head teachers before, that did a good job. I mean, some schools weren't, okay, fine, then put measures in place. But head teachers did a good job. They had support staff, they had autonomy, and it worked. And there's a rise in behaviour issues in school, and there's a lowering of pupil to staff ratio. So, or whichever way around it is. I'm sorry, my brain is gone. But so we need boots on the ground. I don't know. Do we need a business leader leading our business, or do we need compassionate human beings in the building working with the young humans that we're trying to develop?
Last question, Michelle, which is around what do policymakers have to understand that they currently don't understand relating to your situation and your story?
Relationships matter in schools. Adult to child relationships. The child needs to feel liked. They just do. When they feel judged, hated, my teacher hates me. How many times have you heard that? And that's fine. If they think their history teacher hates them, that's fine. As long as they feel that their geography teacher likes them, or that they've got someone in the breakout space at break time that likes them. They've got to have somebody in the school that likes them, and we're just missing those humans because teachers are so stretched and tired and anxious.
Listen, Michelle, it's been, so sort of impactful to be able to talk to you this morning. I'm sure everybody watching and listening and people who watch back or listen back are going to have the same experience. There's a huge amount of sort of reflection points. It goes without saying that myself and everybody at TTR wishes you absolutely the very best in your recovery. And I mean, what is the plan? Have you got a plan sort of moving forward? What's your sort of, or is it still at the minute just recovery and that's as far as you're looking?
Yeah, sadly, it's not recovery, it's degeneration. So it's degeneration management. It's not good. I do what I can job-wise to keep the mortgage payments going. So it will be life in a wheelchair, but we just don't know when at the moment. But we stay positive because it's all part of the plan, isn't it?
Well, Michelle, the way you've sort of talked this morning and as I said, it goes without saying that there's not going to be many people watching this who don't admire you for what you've managed to sort of go through and what you continue to go through, which, personal view here, I don't think any teacher or leader should have to ever go through what you've had to go through. But here we are. So thank you very much for giving up your time this morning to talk to us. It's been really impactful. So if anybody's obviously been affected by this or if anybody has any comments to make, feel free to leave them on social media or drop us an email, or I'm sure you can contact Michelle as well if you want to.
Yes.
And, do reach out. There's lots of places you can reach out if you're somebody who's been affected by this, education support, lots of other places you can go if you think, or you mentioned unions or
unions,
professional bodies.
Can I also do a shout out to my amazing solicitors, Thompson solicitors, Joanne. Oh my word, she had my back. She really had my back for 7 years. She really did. So anybody, and Thompson's do the NAHT and the other unions as well. So absolutely feel that you're in amazing hands when you go with them, definitely.
Listen, Michelle, it's been great. So thank you very much. Great's probably the wrong word. It's been impactful. So thank you very much. And we'll be back again on TTR over the weekend. Take care, everybody, and good morning to you.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement